Ambassador Ajai Malhotra, seldom is a bilateral relationship in focus of the international lens so much, especially the West and the United States. And given that both India and Russia happen to be at a delicate stage of negotiation with the United States, how do you see this visit of President Putin to India in that context?
Well, you know, India-US ties have got strained due to the oil trade with Russia, which is unfortunate because there's no reason for that. This is the same countries who otherwise tell us, you know, the market will prevail everywhere. And when we let the market prevail, they come and start lecturing us. So, but it will be there, in my view, in the background, part of the atmospherics about the summit, certainly not on its formal agenda. You know, we follow a policy of strategic autonomy, of multi-alignment in our foreign relations. And our relations with USA and Russia are not a zero-sum game. We want the best of relations with both countries, and we will act in our national interest to keep India first, as we often say. So our private companies and PSUs may keep in mind their larger commercial interests, which is correct, while buying oil and gas. But I should point out also that, you know, while we have a special and privileged strategic partnership with Russia, and this description we don't assign to any other such relationship, we also have a comprehensive global strategic partnership which was signed with President Trump when he came here in February 2020. And what has been the impact of that? We have the highest tariffs imposed on us by the Americans, which may be withdrawn, and we hope they are. We have sanctions imposed, whereas China is a bigger buyer of oil and gas from Russia. USA itself buys uranium, which is a nuclear fuel, from the Russians, and increased their purchases last year. So not only tariffs and sanctions, but also the difficulties and added costs for our H-1B visa holders, the talk about a G2 with China, when we favor a multipolar world and a multipolar Asia, and the strong tilt towards our troublesome neighbor Pakistan, who have, you know, the Americans have been mollycoddling the Pakistani army setup and keeping them in their lap, as it were. So these are things that our American friends need to think about. I do wish they come to the right conclusions and look at improving our ties, because we need to have the best of ties with USA, just as we do with Russia. So in my view, this is a context in which we should view this visit. And I do hope the Americans are watching carefully and understanding what correctives they need to put in place as they go ahead.
Yeah, well, so far we haven't really heard anything from Donald Trump or the White House, you know, as far as the reception of President Putin was concerned. Perhaps they're waiting for the entire visit to, you know, conclude and then come up with their comments, because the last time when leaders had come together along with President Xi in Tianjin, Trump had commented that the US has lost India and Russia to darkest China, and that seemed like almost rueful. Ajai Malhotra, do you feel that that is a sentiment that will still persist in DC?
Well, since then he described China as G2, for example, which is a matter of concern to us. I mean, we don't want one single dominant power then to be replaced by a pair of them, especially one of them is with whom we have a bit of a problem. So yeah, that is a concern. But as regards the welcome and all, he gave exactly a similar welcome to President Putin when he came to Anchorage. Red carpet rolled out. He went to the airport to receive him. So I think he should just feel happy in a situation where America is trying to restore its ties with Russia, and which is the right thing to do to help stop that war in Ukraine. And if USA and Russia move ahead on that, that would be wonderful in my viewpoint, because that would not only stop the killing and the suffering for the people of Ukraine and Russia who are in those war zones, but it would also be nice for us that our two friends, especially Russia, but also USA, with whom we want the best of ties, are on the same side and shooting in the same direction, as it were. And then I think we need to look at, if these things progress right, look at how we can, you know, further strengthen our partnership with both Russia and India and move it ahead.
Ambassador Malhotra, from your experience of having served in Russia, could you give us an insight into the layers of people-to-people connect between the two nations? Because there appears to be a great interest in formulating a certain migration treaty there's a possibility of that where trained, skilled Indians could go work in Russia, and this a win-win partnership could be evolved. But could you give us a sense of how this partnership, the people-to-people connect, has evolved over the years?
Well, let me tell you that, if you travel across Russia, and I've lived there for many years, you travel across Russia, you go to small towns, villages, etc., and you see the warmth with which you're received if you say, I'm from India. In fact, you don't have to say anything. If you're a lady from India wearing a sari or a bidhi, you can see it in the eyes of those who look at you. The ladies, you can see that how charmed they are, how interested they are to see somebody who's different, and yet somebody who they think is like them in their thinking, etc. So yes, there's a lot of tremendous goodwill for India across the country, which goes way beyond government-to-government interaction, etc., which is also at a very high level. But that is very reassuring. And when you look at manpower deployment, yes, I think they would be received well. And when we put in place a structure that looks at salaries, etc., so that they go and benefit from it and save and can send money back home and help Russia in its manpower situation, yes, I think that's great. It's good for both countries. And unlike the situation you might find in other parts of the world, our workers will be treated very well up there. And I won't worry so much about the cold either. I know, for example, in Archangelsk, for example, which is on the Arctic, you have, several hundred Indian students who study there and don't feel the cold at all. All houses, everything are heated. Energy is not a problem up there. So even in a minus 50 or 60 centigrade temperature, you get a very, in fact, quite often you have to shed your clothes because it might be overheated and go around in a pajama and vest simply because you may not be able to control the temperature out there. So tremendous goodwill, I think a huge opportunity, and great for India and Russia. I think both of our countries will benefit from such a deployment.
I asked this with our guest yesterday as well, as to all these possibilities are there in terms of where India and Russia relations can go. But does it at all hinge in any way on how this conflict in Ukraine is resolved? Because of Ukraine, India is facing these punitive tariffs that the Americans have imposed on us, and of course a lot of companies, if they want to go and expand their business exports into Russia, or they want to invest in Russia, or if people want to go work there, would they have to also consider the fact that there is still a conflict on, and this could impact their livelihoods and lives as well in the coming days, be it through additional sanctions or increased hostilities?
Well, Russia is a huge country. It goes across more than 11 time zones. And so it's like if there were a shootout at one edge, they'll hear about it maybe a day later on the other side of Russia. So just to bear in mind, I don't think the war is such a major consideration for anyone planning to go and work there. If you visit Moscow even now, and the number of tourists arriving in Russia from India have grown quite significantly, which is a good thing. If you visit, you wouldn't know that there's this sort of war going on, as it were. But obviously, it would be nice if it be sorted out. I think this is going in the right direction because suddenly this will all be over. Suddenly, Russia will no longer be viewed by the West, at least by USA, as a complicated country. I don't know about the Europeans. I think they're barking in the wrong direction. But if the West, if USA and Russia sort out the issues, then all of this would open up. And I see, if you reviewed what happened in Anchorage and the follow-up, where a huge American delegation went, and many of them are keen to take advantage of the openings they see out there. And part of any arrangement might be this, how they can jointly exploit for resources in the Arctic, etc. I think we need to be there with our foot through the door. Or otherwise we will feel bad later on that, we didn't take this into account.
Ambassador, just staying with that point, because Gautam mentioned the Ukraine conflict, many also say, given the advanced stages of negotiation, that this conflict could be in its end game, in the final stages. And what you mentioned about American interest in engaging with Russia, one of the points in the peace pointer negotiation that President Trump has forwarded also talks about realigning Russia with global economy. So from the harshest sanctions to bringing Russia back into the fold. So in that sense, these are exciting possibilities then for both India and Russia in the context of global economy, if it works out in that manner.
I agree with you entirely. Indeed, I am a strong supporter of cooperation between India, Russia, and USA. And I think that might again be heading, things might again be heading in that direction. If the Americans reach understandings, for example, even in whether it's oil exploration, tapping the resources, as I said, and with the opening up of the Northern Sea route, huge opportunities out there. It's not merely from Chennai to Vladivostok, but going beyond. I mean, you have to think going all the way to Murmansk, across the Arctic Ocean, all of that will open up. And for example, even on nuclear reactors, we talk of Kudankulam, the big ones, but now we're looking at small modular reactors. These are the ones that the Russians have great experience in using on their icebreakers. So there are opportunities out there because these link up with our interests and requirements. So whether it's on a government-to-government side or whether it's on a private sector side, there are huge opportunities. I think our industry needs to be more entrepreneurial, and especially with banking and insurance coming in from the Russian side and our side, if we can tie all of that up, it is very reassuring to the businessman. At the same time, when I see that India, the international north-south transportation corridor, unfortunately there you go through Iran also, which has sanctions, so many hesitate to use that, even though you might save a lot of time and cost by sending goods down that pathway. But this one that would go through Vladivostok and onwards, I think gives you huge opportunities. And Indian business should be entrepreneurial enough to take that bit of risk for now, get your structures in place for cooperation, and by then I think things would start sorting themselves out. And suddenly you might have opportunities to kind of benefit from it in a way that is of help to both our countries and to the industries that make those moves.
Yes, certainly. And there are clear indications that Vladimir Putin is looking at the possibility of getting to the end of this conflict very soon, some sort of settlement working out. On that note, thank you for joining us, Ambassador Ajai Malhotra. I believe that this is the time that we had with you, so glad to have had that. Thank you once again.
India and Russia are old friends. They share a 78-year legacy of stable, time-tested partnership. The bond between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Vladimir Putin reflects the depth of this strategic partnership, strengthened further through the annual summit format and the 2+2 dialogue. The regular high-level engagement continues to drive cooperation across political, defense, economic, technological domains,